If they really want to get, or if they wind up getting what they want, more money, they want to get paid by men, the answer is simple. You shut down women's basketball. Shut it down. It's over. It is completely financially unviable.
Renegade Online.
From Angel Reese. I want to explain this because a lot of people out there don't seem to understand kind of how this works. And especially, unfortunately, people like Angel Reese don't seem to understand how this works. This idea of pay equity. This pay equity thing. This all boils down to the misunderstanding that if person A and person B both do or perform the same task, then person A and person B should be paid or rewarded or compensated in the exact same fashion. The problem is the total disregard for the product of that work. And this is what's going on here. Angel Reese, WNBA women's basketball star, says we should be getting paid like NBA players. Now, some of this is going around right now for this collective bargaining agreement. They want to get paid more money. Why? And they say, well, the guys are over there doing it, right? And the guys are getting paid 10 times, 20 times, 30 times more than we are. Some cases more. 100 times in some cases, 200 times in some cases. The problem is, of course, yeah, the women out there play basketball and the men play basketball, but there's some very, very distinct differences here that need to be addressed. Namely, the amount of money that the NBA generates. And even though its viewership has been shrinking in the last several years, there's no comparing the two. And somebody like Angel Reese just wants to go out there and complain about it. That's fine. But if you want to make yourself look like an idiot, keep doing what you're doing. And let's talk about why that is. I went and found a chart on this. I was like, I know these stats are out there, and I wanted to bring this up. And it's here. And it didn't take much. And the data in here, I think, is pretty solid because it comports with some data that I've seen in the past, okay? And some of the things that we need to understand in terms of differences here, it's not just what they're doing, it's about what they're producing. Here's some of the nitty-gritty. And I don't care about the size of the basketball or all this, but this is the difference. In NBA, the men's league has a roster that consists of a maximum of 15 players, a minimum of 12. The team may have 2 additional players under contracts who split the time with the parent club. A WNBA roster has a maximum size of 12 players. There's just really fewer women playing basketball to go around, possibly, I guess, is the reason for a slightly smaller roster. A player in the NBA draft has to be at least 19 years old. Player in the WNBA has to be at least 22. But this is where the big stuff is. Oh, there it is. $10.5 billion in gross revenues for the NBA, the men's league, in 2023. These are 23 figures. $200 million for the WNBA. The NBA makes 50 times more money, according to this, gross revenues, than the WNBA. The average salary in the NBA, $11.9 million, versus the average salary in the WNBA of $119 million. In other words, if you started paying WNBA players, if you started paying Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark like the average NBA salary of 12, just say the average salary was 10, you'd only be able to hire 20 WNBA players in the entire league. And that's if you spent every penny of revenue that would come in. That means you'd have no money to actually lease an arena to play the games in. You'd have no money to pay coaches anywhere. You'd have no money basically to do anything. You'd pay players to do nothing. Do you understand that, Angel? You can't do it. You just can't do it. Part of the issue is, and people need to understand, that it doesn't matter if it's the women's league or the men's league. The fact of the matter is that if you're going to go rent that arena to play that basketball game in, it doesn't matter if you're a women's team, a men's team, or if you're Little League, or if you're renting it out to do a Taylor Swift concert. The fee to rent that facility, to staff it, to turn the lights on, to operate it, to have parking attendants out there, it's going to be the same thing. When you make 200 times more money, I mean, if you're the men's league, basically you're covering your fixed costs. The Women's National Basketball League, they have fewer teams than the men. They play fewer games every season than the men. No, it really isn't the same. Yes, these women may go out there and they might play basketball just like the men do, but the actual product of their work is nowhere near the same. Ergo, you're not going to get paid the same. Even though you think it's the same job, it's really not. The men's basketball team, the male player's job is to go out there and keep that $10 billion a year train running. Every NBA team out there, insofar as we know, is profitable. Look at some of the other stats here. Average ticket price, 94 versus 87. The problem is the WNBA sells far fewer tickets, and of course, these averages are retail price. We've seen a lot of times, especially with the NBA even, they reduce these tickets all the time to try to get people to show up. $55 million a year for Stephen Curry, the highest player in the NBA. $252,000 a year for Jackie Young, the highest player in the WNBA. $1.6 million is the average viewership for an NBA game in 2023 versus $505,000. Well, hang on, Valliant. That's only about 3 times more than the WNBA. So what gives? Well, you're right, but bear in mind, at the same time, there are far more games and teams in the NBA every season than there are the WNBA. So that's a big part of it. That's a big, big part of it. And the finals, of course, look at the average attendance, 2-1. I kind of have an issue believing the WNBA average attendance on that one, but hey, I could be wrong. But you look here at some of these other ones. How does each league distribute its revenue? This is where they're kind of getting upset. Roughly 50%, half of the National Basketball League's revenue is split between the league itself and the players. That's their collective bargaining agreement, or the CBA. It's estimated that in the WNBA, the split is 75-25. Basically, 3/4 of the revenue stays with the league, and only 25% goes back to the players. Well, Valliant, that's the problem. They need to stretch that out. That's got to be 50-50, just like the men. Here's the problem. It goes back to the problem. It goes back to the issue of fixed costs that I just referred to. The WNBA still has to have an administrative staff, a marketing arm. It still has to rent similar arenas to what the men's basketball teams do. They still have that floor of fixed costs that don't matter how big you are or whatnot. You still have to pay them. There's still a fixed floor of costs. The difference is that the the men's basketball league is so far above that fixed floor cost that they can afford to do a 50-50 split in the collective bargaining agreement. I'm going to tell you right now, the WNBA can't even afford to pay the players the 25% that it's got coming in, because there's been plenty of stories out there, and I think even this article cites some, that over time, a lot of these WNBA teams have changed hands because they were totally unprofitable. And even just 5 years ago, most of the people that owned them, they didn't even think they'd ever really be profitable, because the WNBA has always been a little sister. It's been a pet of the NBA. And I've joked for years that the W in WNBA stands for welfare, not women's. And what I mean by that is it's literally lived. The league itself has survived off of the welfare from the NBA, from the men's leagues. Every time that the NBA goes out, just like they did this past year, and they negotiate a contract with Disney and Comcast and Amazon or whoever else got involved this year when Warner Brothers dropped that, I think it was Amazon. There's a piece of that. When they sign up, when they buy those NBA contracts, they're also agreeing to take on WNBA games as well and televise a certain number of those, even though the advertising revenue kind of sucks and they're kind of probably losing money on it. And the reason we can tell is because the split going to the revenue that's being generated to the women's league is pathetic. It's nothing next to the men's league. This is how we know when we make these comments about how they're just not the same. We know this factually. We can tell because we can see it right there in black and white. The problem is the money just isn't there to pay these players anymore. The money isn't there, frankly, and in a lot of cases, I don't think, to pay them what they're getting now. Not all of them. You got guys like Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, and they have, personally, they're probably fine. Think about this for a second. Drive up to a McDonald's right now. Go on a McDonald's app. One of the first splash screens on there is the Angel Reese combo. In other words, they're getting their endorsement deals. And that's probably a multi-million-dollar endorsement deal for Angel Reese. Okay? Just like NBA players have endorsement deals. They get paid more money off the court than on the court, especially if they're a big name. So Angel Reese is still getting her endorsement deal. Caitlin Clark has endorsement deals. They're getting paid a lot more off the court than on. So you could be a big star out there and still get paid. But as of right now, as far as the WNBA, well, I don't know where they're going to get the money from. Unless, and this is why it's not going to happen, unless they start taking more of it from the men's league. And therefore, the NBA players, the men, are going to have to start taking serious pay cuts. I mean, massive pay cuts if they want to, again, subsidize the women's league that doesn't deserve it because they're not making anywhere near the same money. Again, this is the problem, okay? Right here, 50, basically, times the revenue, total revenue, NBA versus WNBA. Somebody's going to get screwed over if they want to do this, and it's going to be the guys. That's why it's not going to happen. So the women can do their collective bargaining agreement all they want, and this is the problem. If they really want to get, or if they wind up getting what they want, more money, they want to get paid by men, the answer is simple. You shut down women's basketball. Shut it down. It's over. It is completely financially unviable. It is now. And it's only being propped up because it's got a big men's sport that is financially subsidizing it to the tune of a lot of money. A lot of money. Now, they're trying to make it better. You know, they get Caitlin Clark in there. It looks like they've had a big ratings pop, at least for her games. And maybe that's the start of something longer trend for the WNBA. Time will tell. But the WNBA has been around now for 10, 15 years. Basically, it's really no better off than it was 10 or 15 years ago. You take away the subsidies, the subsidies from the NBA, and this league doesn't exist at all. So good luck with this little plan. I got nothing for you. Sorry, girls. It's nothing personal, but you just don't make anywhere near the money. It's not about the fact that you're out there on the court playing the same games or some of the same games as the men. You just aren't earning the money because nobody's watching, because nobody cares, because your entire professional league and your television contracts were forced into existence by really more or less, it was kind of a DEI initiative. Let's be honest. Especially the gender equity. You know, we got women's sports. We have men's sports. We need women's sports. That's what you got with this. They forced it into existence. Let's see if we can make it a thing. Here we are 10, 15 years later, and apart from a flash in the pan, really like Caitlin Clark, this is really not going to change. Women don't even really watch women's sports, not in any significant numbers. Men don't watch them either. It's just how it is. Now, things like women's tennis, they go play Wimbledon, U.S. Open, French Open, stuff like this, and you have men's and women's divisions. Everybody's watching that. It's a different, but like a women's sports league, like basketball, or who knows what else they're going to come up with. Well, they had soccer. Nobody really watched this. Nobody. The women's team was winning soccer, right, for several years, but nobody really watched them. They still weren't making the same money as the men because even though the men were losing, they still had 5, 10 times the audience. They were commanding so much more revenue. That's just how it is. Too bad.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valliant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.